Hi, welcome to the Brief Book Reviews channel, otherwise known as An Old Guy Reviews the Book that he's read this week. So what's the old guy read this week? Well, the book I've read this week is this one. It's called They Thought I Was Dead by author Peter James. It was published by Macmillan as a hardback here in the UK on the 9th of May 2024, so last week. Regular viewers will know that I'm a fan of the Roy Grace series, Brighton's busiest detective, nowadays Detective Superintendent Roy Grace. And this is another Roy Grace book, although with a twist, because in this book, Roy Grace is a peripheral figure. And it tells us on the front that this is Sandy's story. To those who don't know the backstory here, Sandy Grace, Roy Grace's wife, in the early Roy Grace stories, we see a troubled Roy Grace, because on Roy Grace's 30th birthday, his wife Sandy just disappeared. Car abandoned at Gatwick Airport. In the early days, it's always the husband that did it. Roy's under suspicion, but he's troubled in the early books by the fact that nobody knows what happened to Sandy. She's basically just upped and left, and no one's seen or heard of her. As the years go by and as the book series continues, Roy eventually, meets somebody else. He meets a lady called Cleo, who he eventually marries. And Sandy's the elephant in the room when he initially starts going out with Cleo. He gets her certified as dead after a few years has passed, marries Cleo, moves on with his life, and then finds out that actually Sandy is still alive. Initially, in one book, one of his former colleagues said, "You know what? I was in Germany on holiday and I swear I saw Sandy in a park," and later finds out that Sandy is alive, has had a child called Bruno, and is living in Germany. But when Roy finds out, she's in hospital. So that's the bit of the Sandy story that we know. But there are huge bits missing of the Sandy story. We don't know what on earth made her want to disappear in the first place. We don't know why she disappeared. We don't know how she disappeared. And we don't know what she's been up to in between leaving Brighton and ended up in Germany, having a child, and there's like a 9-year period. So this, dear reader, is the book that fills in those gaps. This is Sandy's story. Fans of Roy Grace will be delighted that those gaps have finally been filled in. So in this book, we finally find out what drove Sandy to just up and leave. We find out how she left, and we see a story of Sandy travelling, in different places with different people for different reasons. This is a modern state story of modern vices, I guess. I don't want to give too much of the story away. But this finally fills in the gaps that's been missing from Sandy's story. It's quite an easy read, and certainly if you're a Roy Grace fan, you will enjoy reading it, because, as I said, it fills in the gaps that previously had been left. People thinking, "Hang on, what did happen to Sandy?" So now we know. So I enjoyed it. Really good read. I guess, it's a story of a woman who disappears, and there are reasons for her disappearance, so you can read it as a one-off, but really this will appeal to Roy Grace fans, people that have followed the Roy Grace books, because this answers a lot of the questions that were being posed, and we find out a few things that we didn't know before. So really enjoyed it. Good read. It's 400 odd pages. Let me get that right. He says, madly checking the back of the book, it's just over 430 pages of the actual story. So relatively easy read. I read it in 2 sessions. I'd give it, as a standalone story, for those that aren't Roy Grace fans, probably 6 out of 10. If you're a Roy Grace fan, probably 7 out of 10. So worth a read. And Peter James is an established author. He very rarely produces a bad book, so he's a talented author. And the good news is there's going to be another Roy Grace story later on this year, as appears to be the norm nowadays. There's the first couple of chapters of the next Roy Grace book is in the back of this book. It's going to be called One of Us is Dead, and it'll be released in autumn 2024. So that's it for this week's brief book review. As I said, a slightly different Roy Grace tale, in which Roy only feels features as a peripheral character in this one, but well worth a read if you're a Roy Grace fan. So that's it for this week's brief book review. 10/10 till we do it again. Thanks for watching.